Welcome to the Rockabye Revenue Podcast with me, Abby Watson. I'm a mum of 4 and a business strategist, and I train people to become hypnobirthing teachers. In the last decade, I've built a thriving baby business that grew beyond my wildest dreams. This podcast is for you if you run a business or dream of running a business in the birth and baby industry. You want to change lives whilst making more money. I'm talking about creating sustainable income whilst being present for the people that matter most. I believe for our baby businesses to have the impact we desire, we must be rewarded. On this podcast, expect me to share actionable strategies without the jargon. I've been where you are. I've built a business while raising 4 little ones, and now I'm here to help you turn your passion into profit while creating the life you've always dreamed of. So let's get started. Hello there, my lovely. How are you doing today? I am very excited to come on and talk about this. And please don't be fooled by the title. As in, if you're not a newbie to business, please don't think that this episode is not going to be useful to you. It is. So do keep listening. Whether you are at the start of your journey or whether you are a seasoned pro, there are going to be so many golden nuggets of inspiration and tips in this episode. What am I blooming talking about today then? Well, I'm talking about how to have wild success when you start something new. So if you are starting your business for the very first time, this episode is all about how to launch it like it's Coca-Cola, Launch it like it's a blooming big deal and have incredible success right away. This is also going to be so useful to you if you've been doing this a while and actually you're relaunching or you're adding something new to what you do, or actually you just want some blooming good tips on how you can think more aspirationally. Is that a word? Aspirational? Be aspirational? Who knows? In what you do so that you can, do the big thing. Be that person that is absolutely booming in this business. So why am I talking about this today? Well, because when I returned from holiday last week, I was just absolutely blown away by my blooming garden. Please keep listening, even if you're not into gardening. Well, if you've heard any of these previous episodes on the Rockabye Revenue Podcast, you will know that I have very, very recently got into gardening. As much as I've resisted it my entire life because my parents were big into gardening and they literally tortured me by making me watch Gardener's World, I've got into it. I have. I've got the bug. And I have literally been obsessed with gardening for the last few months. So when I got home from holiday, oh my God, I could not stop admiring the growth of my garden. Like I was literally just staring at the plants and coming in to my husband and being like, come and look at this. And he doesn't appreciate it like me. He don't. Taking a million photos on my phone. I just couldn't believe that in less than a week it had grown so much and was just looking so incredible. Now, when I was away, my mum and dad were over looking after the cats, and my sister came over as well. And they were just like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe your garden. It's looking amazing. Like, honestly, people have never been as proud of me as they are right now about the garden. And I don't know what that says about them or me, because my gosh, I've done other things in my life to be proud of. But like my mum's like, oh my gosh, Abby, I'm so proud of you. I'm like, you've never said that to me before. I've grown an amazing business. I've, made 4 kids. You know, I've done some good stuff, and she's never actually said that, but she has with this garden, which is just bizarre, Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. So why has me coming home to like love my garden made me want to talk about having wild success in your business early on? Well, I tell you why. When I look at my garden and I'm like, I can't believe I've done this, it kind of has reminded me what I am like as a person. When I start something, I make it my focus. I know I am going to have wild success, whatever it takes. That's me as a person. I go out to excel, I suppose. And it feels a little bit uncomfortable saying that, but I guess what I'm trying to say is I give the things that I care about, and I don't give everything 100%, believe me, but the things that I care about and the things that I decide I'm going to make my mission, I blimmin' put 110% into. And I really believe that that has been my secret to success in my hypnobirthing business too. When I started my hypnobirthing business, I went into it without a doubt that I would make a roaring success of this. When I evolved my business to be a training business, knowing that I was going to train others to be hypnobirthing teachers, again, I went into it like knowing it was going to be a great thing, you know? Yet, I still had that thing of, I can't believe it, you know? I still had that feeling of, oh my gosh, this is just incredible. So what I'm talking about today in today's episode is how I go about that, you know, how I strategically and mindset-wise go about making a roaring success of something, even when it feels a little bit unreasonable, even when other people could say, well, when you're starting out, you know, if you just get a few pot plants together, you know, in terms of the analogy of the garden, you know, or they might say, well, when you're starting out in your hypnobirthing business, as long as you get a couple of clients in your first year, you'll be all right. And it can grow from there. No, I'm not accepting that. You know, I am Mrs. Impatience. I want things done yesterday, never mind in a blooming year, you know? So this impatience, this kind of drive to see incredible results soon has almost been a bit of my superpower. And I honestly believe it's something that you can learn too. This isn't like some kind of secret magical power that I've got. Yeah, I just called it a superpower. But actually, you can get some of that yourself too. You can. And that's what I'm going to be sharing today. So buckle up for feeling really inspired and motivated and invigorated in your thing, because that's my intention today. I want you to borrow my approach. I want you to have that wild success that I know, I blimmin' know you are capable of. Many people that go into business and have roaring success right away. Why shouldn't it be you? Why shouldn't it be you? Who's to say you're not going to do incredible things? Not in a decade, but really, really soon. Who's to say that you're not? So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So, how do I go about having this incredible success quickly? And for a bit of context, when I started my hypnobirthing business, within my first year, I was celebrating having taught nearly 50 clients in my first year. I was doing group courses and I was filling group courses by the end of my first year. And by the end of my first year, I also had a website jam-packed with birth stories, you know, from my clients. I'd got this incredible feedback. And after that first 12 months, I looked extremely established in my business. Now, I know that isn't necessarily what everyone does. So I know that was quite wild success. Certainly a decade ago when hypnobirthing was not as well known as it is today. And my business continued to supercharge and grow from there on. And, when I take the example of when my business evolved to, train people to be hypnobirthing teachers, I launched that in the summer of 2020, and I remember feeling like really, aware that I could end up earning quite a lot and have a blooming big tax bill, and I felt really nervous about that. And I also knew that at the time the VAT threshold, so for paying VAT, was 85 grand. If you earn 85 grand in 12 months, you would have to start paying VAT, as in 20% of everything on top of all the other tax. So I was like, I want to avoid that. Within that first year, I got bit in the butt, and I went over that, like not even knowing it. And it was like, oh my gosh, now I have got to add VAT onto what I charge, and I'm going to have this whole other admin thing. But also, blooming hell, like having that huge jump in income was incredible. And, really showed how wild that success of starting a training school had been for me. So that's for a bit of context. That's the wild success that I have had in my business. And please, whilst you hear that I've got a lot of kids and, they've got additional needs and they're hard work, and I want to be a very present mum. And I almost pride myself on being a present mum. I don't consider myself a businesswoman almost. I consider myself like a homemaker, I suppose. So I've had that wild success whilst being present at home. So I really think that is something to consider, because I am sure there are many, often men that, have many times that level of success, but perhaps they sit at a desk for 10 hours a day. I've never done that. I never want to do that. No way. I work very part-time. So that's something to consider for context. Also, for context, please know that when I first trained as a hypnobirthing teacher, I did faff about a fair bit. I did wait for my ducks to be in a row, and I always say to people, do not do that. Do not be an Abby and wait till, you feel like, okay, I've got this shiny website. But once I did take the plunge, that's when I really went for it. Okay, so I didn't go for it as soon as I had my certificate or even as soon as I started training. But when I went for it, I went for it. Okay, so I believe you could have, this wild success even sooner if you didn't faff about like I did. Okay, so please hear me when I say that. So let's really think about the logistics of how I did this, and how I've always been that person, I guess, that, when I set my mind to something, I know that I'm going to have this wild success. What has been the kind of strategy, the steps I've taken? What has it been about me that's done that? That's not magic to me, that's something that you can absolutely repeat. So firstly, I know that I do set quite unreasonable goals. When I start doing something, I do not play safe, I do not kind of think, oh, what's going to be really realistic here? I want big and I want it fast because that's the impatience that I have. So, when I started this episode today, I talked about how, I've seen this in my growing of my garden. Well, yeah, like when I first got into gardening, and it must have been like March this year, so literally just 5 months ago, I was like, my garden's going to look amazing this summer. It's going to look amazing and it is going to be full with plants. I wasn't like, right, well, I'm just starting out, so I'm just going to focus on, this bit of the garden, and maybe I'm going to have a few pot plants, and maybe I'll start like just growing a few seeds. No, I was all in. I was all in, and I was like, this is going to be blooming beautiful. I'm going to be sat on my new patio table admiring these blooming gorgeous plants. It's going to look like the Chelsea Flower Show. It is. That's what I was like. And in terms of like being realistic, maybe people could have said, Abby, that's not realistic for you. You've got a really busy business. You've got 4 children. One of them isn't in school at the moment. You're fighting for one an EHCP. You're trying to get the other a school place that's suitable. You're stressed out of your tree, Abby. Like, play it safe. But no, I was unreasonable. And that was absolutely the case when I started my hypnobirthing business too. When I started my hypnobirthing business, I had 2 kids under 2 and I was busy. I was sleep deprived and I did not have very much childcare. But yet I was like, I'm going to be going with group courses soon. I'm going to have those full group courses really soon. And there was no like, oh, I hope I do. I just knew I was going to. Okay. Now, unreasonable goals is very different to unrealistic, Yes, I wasn't like, playing it safe. But equally, I wasn't being totally unrealistic. I wasn't like, right, in my first year, I'm going to have earned 6 figures. I wasn't like that. I was just like, I'm going to be celebrating some great results here. I am going to have taught many, many clients. And I'm not going to be just having my own birth stories on my website. I am going to be having that website full with other people's birth stories to show potential clients what can be achieved when you have got a great mindset, tools, and you're able to use your voice. So yeah, I went in with unreasonable goals. And ask yourself, are you playing it too safe sometimes? Setting goals that don't blooming excite you, that just feel like, oh, okay. Like we have to feel excited. We have to feel supercharged by our goals. And if we don't, well, are we going to strive for them? So yeah, firstly, set yourself some unreasonable goals. Stop playing it safe. Second thing that I have noticed that I have done when I have had wild success is this. I have got blooming obsessed with whatever it is that I'm doing. What do I mean by got obsessed? Well, it's been like my number one hobby, my number one focus in life. And I say number one, please know that, I still fed my kids. I still cared for them and was a great mum and all that. Yeah, but away from that, this was my focus, So if I take my garden as an example, any moment that I got spare, I'd be in there, And if I couldn't be in the garden, I would be researching things that's going to help me, have this beautiful garden. Because I got so obsessed that I loved it. It lit me up. It fueled me. And that's exactly the same as when I started my business too. It was the thing that, lit a fire inside me, and I allowed that to happen. If I wanted to read another book, yep, I wasn't telling myself off, and thinking, I should be reading fiction. No, I wanted to read a book about childbirth. So I allowed myself to take that action because I was blooming obsessed, So I made it my focus, because we can't just have unreasonable goals but then not take any action, can we? That's where people go wrong. They're like, I'm dreaming big, but actually they're not actually taking steps to make that dream a reality. Okay. So in terms of how this can be practically done, for me, it's always been important to find such joy from my business, So yes, when you start out a business, my goodness, there's going to be things that feel scary. But you know what? You're also going to get great joy when you've done that scary thing and you are so blooming proud of yourself for doing it, That's the same as me growing my garden. There's been some jobs in my garden that I'm like, I don't know whether I want to do that. Actually, there's spiders up there. But the feeling of oh my gosh, look, I've done it. And it's brilliant. I'm so glad I have. That gives you joy, And also in terms of your business, so many of us go into baby businesses, birth and baby businesses, because of that passion. But yet, some of us, we get so tied up in shoulds. I should be doing this. I should be networking. I should be posting on social media XYZ times a week. And actually, we stop following the thing that lights us up, the parts of what we do. Sorry, I'm just pausing because I can hear one of my cats howling. How bizarre. Anyway, back to this. What was I saying? Yeah, we forget to see where we are actually lit up and going deeper with that, And that's something that right now in my business I'm reminding myself of, actually, years down the line, you can probably hear that singing of the cats. Anyway, that's not what I was saying. Years down the line, perhaps my obsession has dwindled and I've got stuck in the weeds, stuck in the monotony of some elements of my business. And yeah, I've been reminded that actually do the fun thing. Do the things that are fun, because you're going to do more of that, So what has being obsessed looks like for me? Well, sometimes being obsessed has meant that I've got started on something and hours have gone by, and I've been sat in bed next to my sleeping toddler, just continuing to beaver away because I've been loving it. Creating websites that could have taken weeks, but actually I got so obsessed with doing it really well that, I just, focused on it and it got done because it was fun. So allowing yourself to find fun with it, getting into it. And how can you get obsessed when you've got so much other things to do in life? Well, you choose to work in a way that suits your life, Maybe you've done other jobs in your life that actually you've not become obsessed with. It's felt a chore. It's felt difficult. Well, maybe because actually you were being forced to work hours that didn't work for you. You were forced to go away from your family or whatever it may be that actually just wasn't working. When we get to run a business, we get to work it in ways that work for us. And what might work for me might not work for you, and so on. So for me, even in my business right now, a very established business, I don't have an office. I don't want an office. I blimmin' love getting into my bed and working from my bed. My bed is my best ever office. I also love a little bit of a Starbucks afternoon of doing a bit of work. I haven't been able to do that for a while because, like I said, my son's been out of school for a long time. But then I've evolved and found other ways that I can work. So it's allowing yourself to be obsessed by finding ways that work for you. And that was the secret with the garden. Why has the garden been able to thrive? Well, because doing the garden was a hobby that I could maintain because I had to be at home, I found a hobby that fits. Can you find a business that fits? Can you find a way of working that fits? And that's a massive game changer. Now, when I'm saying be obsessed, when I'm saying take that obsessed action, please hear me when I say you do not need to maintain that level of work, that level of effort forever. You're not going to need to. That level of obsession that I had at the start of my business or at the time when I was evolving my business to be a training business is not something that I've had to have, from that point. Yeah, I have deep passion for my business. Yeah. But actually, after that period of obsession, I've established things. And actually, the maintenance doesn't need such a big focus and burst of energy. And that's what you'll get too. And I'm sure that'll be the same with my gardening as well. Yeah, I've been blooming obsessed with it for the last 6 months. I reckon that next summer, I'm hoping that I still have the same levels of obsession, but I probably won't, I probably won't, but actually maintaining it will be so much easier because I've established it, and that's the same with business too. Next thing that I have done is, and it really relates to this obsession, is whatever I've done in life that have had wild results is I've seen the bigger mission. I've made my business, I've made my thing, my mission. So what do I mean by that? Well, I mean that I never just think, I teach hypnobirthing. I want to get more hypnobirthing clients. I really focus on the bigger picture of that. Like, what is the mission behind that? Well, for me, it's always been like, I know that through them doing hypnobirthing, they're going to have more confidence in their bodies, and that is life-changing. In a world that tells women that they're too fat, they're too hairy, they're too skinny, they're too this, they're too that, and their bodies are broken, like actually the bigger mission was, oh my gosh, I want women to feel strong and capable, I want them to feel like what they want matters, that they can listen to that intuition, that they are worthy. That was the bigger mission, And why is that important? Well, that's where the excitement, the motivation comes from. So take a moment now and think about, what is your bigger mission? You might teach baby massage. You might be a newborn photographer. So you might take nice photos, or you might run lovely classes. But what is the bigger impact of that, So if you're a baby massage teacher, perhaps it's not about, running classes. It's about providing connection. You are tuning parents in to their babies, which ripple into all the other ages that their children are going to be. What is the bigger mission of what you do? Because really focusing on that and reminding yourself of that is going to be the thing that motivates you even on the hard days. Quick pause before we get back in to tell you that if you are currently thinking about becoming a hypnobirthing teacher, I have the opportunity for you. Starting on the 22nd of September, I'm going to be running a free training called Could You Be a Hypnobirthing Teacher, where you'll get the opportunity to learn in-demand skills to give you a strong foundation ready if you decide to take the plunge to be a hypnobirthing teacher. And guess what? It's completely free. It's over 3 days for an hour each day, all online. And don't worry, if you miss it, you'll be sent the recording. So sign up. The link is in the show notes and I can't wait to see you there. Next thing is, when I start something, I find my cheerleaders. I find my people that also care, that are like telling me how brilliant it is. So like I said at the start of this episode, I've never had so much praise from my parents than when I've done this garden. That has been motivating and that has been great, but not everybody cares about my cosmos and my dahlias, Not everyone cares about that. And that's okay, but we find the people that do. So when I started my business, I let people see behind the scenes, like in my personal life. I didn't keep it a secret once I'd launched it. So on my personal profile, I would talk about the impact of what I was doing. Like, yeah, my personal profile was like, oh, look, my child has turned 1. But it was also like, oh my gosh, have you seen this birth story that I've got? I'm so pleased that my client that I loved working with had an incredible cesarean when she was actually worried that her birth might go down that path. But actually, she loved her birth. Because there will be people in your life, aunties, ex-colleagues that will cheer you on. And when we start something, we need those cheerleaders. We need those people that are talking about you in rooms you're not in, that are telling you how wonderful it is, Yeah, they might not be our clients, but they are going to be the people that are part of this community that you are encouraging. Yeah? And I've also found people a few steps ahead of me that are going to be my cheerleaders, that I can be inspired by, yeah? But that are going to say, oh my gosh, look what you are doing. That is going to keep me going. Another thing that I have always done that absolutely helps you have a wild start to anything is have a constant source of inspiration. So yeah, we've got our inspiration from our mission. Yes, we've got unreasonable goals, but also we are being fed things that are giving us ideas. We're almost having like pep talks all the time, So if I take my example of my garden, you better believe that my Instagram, feed or whatever it's called is full of people growing beautiful plants. It's full of people sharing their incredible tips for how their garden can be wonderful. Yeah? When I started my hypnobirthing business, I followed those business mentors. I followed the people that actually didn't trigger me. I didn't compare myself to them, but they were a few steps ahead of me and I could see similarities in me and them. So it was really inspiring and it really motivated me to think, oh, I could be like that. So having that inspiration, maybe that's why you listen to this podcast, because you find that when you hear me talking about things, it inspires you, it motivates you. Absolutely. Keep listening, Where else can you get that inspiration? Where can you find that fuel? Do you need to be reading more business books? Do you need to be, reading and hearing someone talk about the success they've had in their business, even if it's not quite the same business as yours? There'll be so much that you can gain from that. So having that inspiration. And then, really importantly, and please, if you are multitasking, stop and listen to this. You absolutely have to lap up every bit of success that you have. The wins, whether they are small or whether they are huge. So as much as my goals were unreasonable, that didn't mean that I waited until I'd achieved the unreasonable things to celebrate. Remember when I said that I just got excited about everything? Like, oh my gosh, look at this. That excitement, that celebrating of the wins, oh my gosh, is absolutely one of the secrets to success. Because when we celebrate what we're achieving, more of it comes, because our mindset absolutely benefits. When we're feeling like we are winning, we are doing well, we are going to continue to do great things. Whereas when we are feeling down and like, oh my gosh, nothing is going right, well, are we going to take great action? Probably not. So as much as when I started my hypnobirthing business, I was like, I am going to be teaching group courses. When I got that first inquiry for a one-on-one hypnobirthing course, I was like, oh my gosh, telling everyone, telling my husband, oh my gosh, I've got an inquiry. She said this, she wants to chat to me on the phone. I was excited about it, When I got my first birth story from a client, oh my gosh, I was raving about it from the rooftops. It's that celebration that boosts your mindset and keeps the good stuff coming, because you are going to take the action. We must celebrate all the wins, however big, however small. So in terms of my garden, oh my gosh, like, why do I go out at all hours, to have a little look at my garden? Because I want to see the little wins, When I planted a seed and a little shoot comes up, I'm like, oh my gosh, how exciting, Dahlia blooms for the first time. I'm like, oh my God, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life, and of course, I feel that, but it's actually an exaggeration. But you can see like how that totally boosts you to do more. How can you celebrate more of your successes? And believe me, successes in your business are not just about getting clients. Celebrating your success could be that, oh my gosh, someone's reached out to me to ask me to be on a podcast. Wow, I can't believe it. How exciting. It could be seeing that actually, someone in your life is negative about your business and it doesn't affect you. And you're like, oh my gosh, look at how much I've grown by not being impacted in the way that I once was by that, So I celebrate every blooming win and make sure you are doing it frequently. And finally, really allow yourself to go in with this saying, it's not that deep. It's really not that deep. Like, in the process of growing my garden, there have been so many flops, so many things that haven't worked out. I've planted things, nothing's happened, things have died, I've killed them basically. I've not watered them enough, I've watered them too much. There has been big flops, yeah? And it's no big deal. I'm just going to learn from it. I'm just going to learn from those mistakes. Those are our biggest lessons, our flops, the things that don't go to plan. And sometimes there are things that surprise you, things that work out far better than you ever imagined. And we learn from that too. And none of it is actually that deep, It's just how it is. It's just how it is. We win some, we lose some, as people say, So going in with that headspace of, yeah, I'm going to have unreasonable success, But I also know that there'll be things that don't work out along the way, and that's no big deal. I'm not going to let those flops be like, okay, I'm giving up. Imagine if I was like that when I was growing my garden. My sister's puppy ripped up some of my dahlias. I could have cried. Imagine if that made me feel like, oh, what's the point? We had a terrible storm and so many of my plants were like broken off and I was gutted and I had to rip them up, And I learned a lesson from that I need to give my plants more support. I'm going too deep with this gardening analogy. Please be aware I am not Charlie Dimmock. Do you remember her? I'm certainly not Alan Titchmarsh either. But what I'm saying is there will be times where things feel pretty devastating in the moment. But actually, it's not that deep. It's just a lesson. It's just a lesson. And as much as you're going to have some flops, you're going to have some things that don't work out. You're going to have some incredible things that work out even more than you imagined. And that's what we're here for. And that's why we keep going through all the flops and the lessons. Because it's not really that deep, You're having fun along the way. You're continuing your obsession. So those are the things that have always helped me have this almost like wild success early on. I'm not someone that's going to do things by halves, and you're not. You're not going to do this by half, because I tell you what, if you're starting a business or you're evolving your business or you're adding something new to your business, do you want to be sat there in a year thinking, oh, well, it didn't work out for me, and maybe I could have tried a bit harder. Well, I didn't do that. But anyway, it didn't work out. Wouldn't you be rather saying, it didn't work out, but I know I did everything I possibly could to make it a roaring success? Then you've tried, And actually, I bet that if you throw everything in, you are going to have so much success. And you are going to be celebrating so many things. So please don't half-arse this. Stop putting yourself in the corner and thinking that, those people who have incredible success have got something that you haven't got. All these things that help a person have roaring success, you can absolutely borrow. And remember when I said that, this approach to starting something new with the obsession, with it being your mission, with that kind of going with the fun and focusing on it, it doesn't have to be like that forever. But I tell you what, when you turbocharge in the start of something, you're then only going to have to maintain going forward, I can honestly say that my business right now is super cushy. It is. There are some weeks that I work very little. I might work a couple of hours even. My business is really cushy. It earns me well and it funds a great lifestyle for me and my family. And I know it has great impact on the people that I support. I know that I do a blooming good job. So all that kind of pushing and super focus on it and obsession and, being unreasonable and making it my mission and celebrating everything, absolutely paid off and gets you to a position where you don't have to push as much. But you do have to do the groundwork, So going back to my garden analogy, if I think about it, there's been some hard work put into that garden, but I've loved it. I've blooming loved it. and I get to reap the rewards. And it doesn't mean now I just leave it to, go all weedy. I do have to maintain my garden, and, I get to cut the flowers and enjoy them. I really do. But that pushing had to be done at the start. My action had to match my unreasonable goals. Who is anyone to say that you can't do amazing things, that you can't be that person that says, look what I've done in my first year of my business. Look what I've done in the first year of launching this thing. How can anyone say that to you? Why not do incredible things? You don't have to wait. You don't have to earn your stripes before you do big things. Do blooming big things now. You deserve it, and you have it in you. You do. And those people that are doing amazing things, believe me, they're not necessarily any more talented or any more better at their service than you. They're just doing these things that we talked about today. So yeah, they set unreasonable goals. Yes, they found their cheerleaders. They allowed themselves to get obsessed with what they were doing at times that worked for them and their lives. Yeah, they saw the bigger mission and they let other people know that bigger mission too. They constantly fueled themselves with inspiration and they allowed themselves to learn as they go, and they didn't let the flops, the things that didn't work out, put them off. They didn't. They didn't let the thing that didn't work out be the end. It just wasn't that deep. Wasn't that much of a big deal for them. They just kept on going. And that's what you can do. Yeah. So I really hope this episode, which has got me a bit too excited, you probably, if this is the first podcast episode of the Rockabye Revenue podcast you've ever listened to, maybe you think I'm a bit unhinged. Because I feel a bit. It's made me a bit giddy. So my apologies. I am not unhinged. Or maybe I am a little bit. Maybe we need to be a bit unhinged. Who knows? Anyway, if this is the first episode that you have ever listened to, please look at the other episodes that we have. We've got loads. We've got loads now. I think we're approaching 50 episodes of loads of inspiration for building an incredible birth or baby business. So please go back and listen. There's so many different episodes on so many different things, from the strategy behind running a successful business to the mindset, to me sharing the flops and what you can learn from them. And as always, do me a blooming favour, please, and rate, or what's the other thing you can do to the podcast? Follow it, subscribe, those kind of things, please do, because it helps the algorithm reach the right people so more people can benefit from this podcast. Because let's face it, we are the helpers in the world. We are the people doing good things. And us people doing good things, we need support in building incredible businesses so that we can keep doing it and keeping on changing those lives. So please, please, please do rate, review, subscribe, whatever it is. And even better, send this to a friend. If you've got someone that you know that works in this industry, whether they teach hypnobirthing, whether they're a doula, whether they're a baby massage instructor, sleep consultant, if they work with parents-to-be or new parents, please, please, please send them an episode of this podcast. Maybe it's this episode. Maybe they're starting out. Maybe they need to start out like they are a big deal. Send it their way. They will be grateful. And, I'll be grateful too. And as always please share, please always share with me your takeaways from this episode, because, I'm just sat in my living room with a microphone and I don't always see those light bulb moments that you have, and it just makes my day when people come over to my Instagram at loveyourbirth_training and share with me, because I get to hear what you've done on the back of it, and it just makes me happy. And ultimately I get to share that win. You know, I get to share that win. That's a win. You know, me having an impact is a win, just like it is for you too. Remember to share those wins because I do, and it always keeps me going. So anyway, I hope you have enjoyed this episode, and if you are someone who's thinking about becoming a hypnobirthing teacher and launching your own hypnobirthing business, or maybe you run some other kind of business and you've always thought like, oh, could I add hypnobirthing? I've got a great opportunity for you. September the 22nd, I'm starting a free training for people considering becoming hypnobirthing teachers, where over the course of 3 days, you will learn so much and taste what it is like to be a hypnobirthing teacher. It's called Could You Be a Hypnobirthing Teacher? And I will leave the link in the show notes for you to join so that you get sent the link to what they're called, I can't blooming think. The tutorials, the live tutorials. I will send you, no, I won't send you that. I will leave the link in the show notes and please do join me. I would love to see you there. Take care, everyone, and I shall speak to you soon. Bye. Thank you for listening to Rockabye Revenue. I hope this episode has left you with some fresh ideas and bundles of motivation. If you enjoyed this episode, do make sure you click subscribe so you never miss an installment. And if you found this episode useful, I'd love you forever if you leave a 5-star review, helping this podcast reach the ears of more of the helpers in this world. And remember, keep changing lives. See you next time.